if they're still making arguments to justify the murder of Palestinians, then that's just rooted in racism towards Arabs.
Welcome to the Higher Love with Megan podcast with me, your host, Megan Cooper, a trauma-informed therapist, life coach and disruptor of wellness norms based in Brighton, UK. This isn't another nice-to-have wellness podcast. Instead, this podcast seeks to redefine what it means to be well in today's world. Here, we challenge the status quo, seek to reunite wellness with social justice and improve accessibility, diversity and inclusivity within wellness and beyond. As a listener, you are not here to passively consume. Instead, you are an ambassador for real, embodied, societal and systemic change in the world. As your host, I stand for radical self-inquiry and being able to have those confronting but necessary conversations so that we can remember our collective humanity at this time. We're here for the revolution and you've got a front row seat. I'm so excited to have you here. Ever since we appeared on the Empowering Voices panel together, I've wanted to get you on the podcast. So really excited to have this conversation with you this morning. Thank you so much for being here. Welcoming you, Yasmeen.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation. And I think we're going to be hopefully saying a lot of important things of value today. No pressure to me.
Yes. We'll do our best. I would love for you just to introduce yourself in a way that feels alive and present for you today.
That's such a beautiful way of putting it. I feel like it really relieves the pressure off of introducing yourself. So yeah, good question. So my name is Yasmeen. I am 28 years old. My mother is Palestinian and my father is Syrian, but I grew up in Lebanon mostly because we had no choice. So I think I've lived my entire life with like a identity crisis, this very floaty feeling of where do I really belong? I know Syria, I've been to Syria, but I haven't been there since the start of the war. So it's been a really long time. And then with Palestine, like my mother has never known her homeland because my grandparents were actually from a city called Tabariya, which is now under Israeli occupation. So they were one of the potentially 750,000 to 800,000 people that were forcefully expelled from their lands. Actually, today's May 15, right? Today's the 77th anniversary of the Nakba. Yeah. So my grandparents were Nakba survivors and they left thinking that they would be able to return home. Obviously, they never could. Really unfortunate. But yeah, I guess I call Lebanon my home because it is my home. And I was talking to my mom about this yesterday as well. This is where she feels like she belongs ultimately more than anything. Lebanon's been such a blessing to me. And I studied nutrition there. I did my bachelor's degree in nutrition. And initially I was going to go into medical nutrition therapy, specifically for cancer patients. And I did my dietetics training in a hospital back home in Beirut for a while. But I realized how polarizing that space was. In the sense that people who believed in science didn't necessarily believe in holistic wellness and vice versa. There felt like there was this big divide between those two worlds. So I took a break for a while, and that's when I really started conceptualizing the idea of my startup that I launched a year and a half ago. It's a long, very long-winded story, but to summarize, I started working for a pharmaceutical distribution company. They're based in Saudi Arabia and they distribute nutraceutical products, so like natural supplements and skincare and dental products as well. And I knew nothing about business at the time. And that was right after quitting my rotation at the hospital. But I started learning a lot and I traveled with my mom to India in 2017 or 2018 because she has really bad arthritis and she wanted to seek more of an alternative therapy for herself to complement the medical care that she was getting at the time. And that was when I discovered adaptogens, which are natural herbs and mushrooms that help your body adapt to different stressors, be it physical, emotional, or chemical. And the more research I did on them, the more I felt inspired by their potential. And I remember thinking, I was like, oh my God, like why aren't they using it in the West? Like, why aren't they known in the West? Like, this ingredient, lion's mane, is so incredible. The research on ashwagandha is so fascinating. And I realized at that moment in time that the science, the research was slowly starting to back up the claims that our ancestors have been making for centuries. And yeah, the more research I did on them, the more I was like, I really want to do something that utilize these incredible ingredients, but also going back to the idea of the polarity between science and holistic wellness. I wanted to create something that really bridged that gap between those two worlds. So eventually I started coming up with a skeleton of an idea at the time. And again, had no idea what business was, like didn't know anything about marketing. I sucked at my job. I was like, what is this world? It's a completely new world to me. But eventually I created this like very basic business idea, went to the board of the pharma company that I was working at and presented to them. And I was like, hey, I know I'm only like 21 and know nothing about business, but here's my idea. And this is why you should give me this amount of money. And they were like, no, you don't know anything about business. Go do an MBA, go learn some things, and then come back to us. And I was like, okay. And so that was when I decided I wanted to do like a more progressive version of an MBA because the idea of an MBA wasn't really appealing to me. So I applied to do my master's in entrepreneurship at UCL. And yeah, I got in. Then the explosion happened in Lebanon. It was a whole thing. The visa center exploded for a while. So I was actually late going into my program. It wasn't that late. I think it was only a few weeks. But yeah, getting my visa took a while. And then eventually I left Beirut with a really heavy heart. Like I left it in such a horrible state. And I still think about it to this day because it's been 5 years. I can't believe it's been 5 years. I came and did my master's and then eventually founded Amfi Botanicals. And that was a summary. But yeah, I guess that was a very long introduction.
I'm just curious to ask. I was having a conversation yesterday with a Muslim woman who was born in Birmingham, lives in Birmingham, but her parents are from Libya. And she was articulating in a kind of similar way to you, this having a different heritage. And within your share, you said that you feel like you straddle different spaces. And I've heard that communicated from quite a few people, this sense of like, where do I belong? Where am I meant to be? And I'm just curious, like, how you feel like that has informed your view of the world, your perspectives, the way that you navigate life. Does anything come to mind for you?
It's really interesting because to add on to that kind of identity crisis, I was raised in Lebanon, but I was actually born in Saudi Arabia. So I actually have a Saudi passport, but I don't like, it's very confusing to me. And I think for the longest time, because I went to an American school in Beirut. So we had to sing the American national anthem, which is wild to me. And the majority of our teachers were American. And so I think I picked up on a bit of an accent. That also confused me even more. And I think growing up for the longest time, I was really ashamed of my roots and where I was from. I was thinking of this yesterday, actually. The amount of times that I hated the fact that I wasn't blonde like my white friends in school, or the fact that I didn't have colored eyes, although my dad has colored eyes. But I was like, oh my God, like, why can't I look more white? Why is my hair the way that it is? The amount of times that I straightened my hair to try and get it pinned straight. And I'm like, Mom, but my hair is so puffy. I don't understand. It was something that I really struggled with. So yeah, I think to answer the question, for the longest time, I was very confused and maybe dismissive of my identity and my roots. It was mostly after I moved away from Lebanon. Actually, so Lebanon, during the revolution and the explosion and COVID and everything that happened the years before I moved, I really felt connected to that land and the people there, specifically during the time of the revolution. But I think mostly after I moved to the UK, that was when I really started feeling connected to land that I've never even visited before. Like my Palestinian side, my mom and I were also talking about this. I really feel it in my blood. Like I feel like my blood is boiling and raging right now. And I feel like it's almost ineffable. I can't really explain how I feel about being connected to Palestine, even just partly. But yeah, I'm starting to reconnect with my roots and my heritage. And I feel even more so now than ever before, this need to be proud and be loud about where I'm from. And yeah, the shame that I felt growing up being in American school, I'm still unpacking in therapy. I don't know if I really answered your question.
Yeah, no, you did. However it feels for you is the answer,
Yeah.
right? It's really interesting how, yeah, just to hear people's lived experiences and different emotions that come with, or different perspectives that come with having heritages from different places, and this sense of like where am I meant to be, or it's really interesting. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, because I also feel like human beings need this sense of belonging in order
Yeah.
to thrive and in order to feel well. And I think that for the longest time, our people have really lacked that, especially the diaspora abroad, which is also part of the reason why I moved to Brighton, because I really feel like it's a lot more community
Hmm.
centered here. And that's ultimately what I'm seeking now, is the sense of community, the sense of belonging, even though it feels scattered and we're all over the place and we don't really know, like, where are we ever going to be able to visit our homelands? Not entirely sure, but yeah, community and collective is so important to me
Yeah.
now more than ever before.
Before we go on, I'd so appreciate you to hit follow or subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify, click those three little dots next to settings to rate the show. On Apple Podcasts, you can leave a review or take a moment to explore how you can rate or review on the platform that you're listening or watching. This makes a difference. I truly believe we need to have more of these conversations to shake up the status quo. We'll beat the algorithm together with your clicks and shares. Now back to the episode. I would love to ask you about, I know that activism has played a role within your life for a long time, alongside obviously your background within nutrition, dietetics, and wellness. I'd love for you just to bring into the conversation what that has looked like in your life, because I heard little bits about it on the panel, but I would love to, go a little bit deeper into what activism has looked like in your life.
Yeah, I think activism for me was a role that I think we've all kind of been born into growing up in Lebanon. We didn't necessarily have a choice, especially the youth, the younger generations. I think we really took a step back and took stock of what was going wrong and why our country is so corrupt and there's constantly tension and issues, and we really needed to do something to make a change. It's always been a part of my life, but I think more so around the revolution. Like, I don't even know how to explain how it started, but it was complete anarchy, complete chaos. Because I remember on the panel that we were on, somebody asked me a question, which was, how were the protests organized? And I remember I was like, we just followed the smoke. And I spoke to my friends about it afterwards. And I was like, guys, am I imagining this or was this true? And they were like, yep, literally. We literally just followed the smoke, which signified where the burning tires were, which is where we would come together and just start protesting and chanting and whatever, hitting pots and pans and screaming at the top of our lungs. And so I think during the revolution, when we all started to come together, the youth of Lebanon, that's when it really solidified this idea to me that my existence is inherently political, and to exist as a Palestinian-Syrian living in Lebanon is a form of resistance. And we always didn't necessarily have a choice. We just had to go down and protest. I was literally born into this world to grandparents who were displaced and lost everything they owned. All of the wealth that they built in Tabariya, all gone, and they had to build themselves up from scratch. They ended up fleeing to Syria initially, and they felt really displaced. And then they went to Kuwait, and Kuwait was still very much a desert at the time. So they were really struggling all of their lives. And I was born into that story. These were the stories that I never really knew my grandfather, but my grandmother used to tell me before she passed away. And then experiencing war at the age of 10 as well, and not really knowing how to respond to that or what was really going on, and then fleeing to Jordan and then coming back to Lebanon and then going to school as if everything was normal. I feel like it's always been important to us to speak up and to have these conversations once we reached a certain age. Obviously at 10 years old I didn't really know what was going on, but like at 15, 16, that's when the conversation started getting political. And then also going to an American school and having discussions with our American teachers about that was also really interesting. So yeah, it's inherently present. It's always been political for us, for everyone. Like I speak for all Arab.
Yeah.
Sorry. I speak for all Arabs.
It sounds like it's almost like in its own little microcosm of this is our life, and then here is like the actions that we're taking towards XYZ. And somebody said to me, I remember I was interviewing Jacqueline Kelly on my podcast, who has an account called Our Brave Hearts, and she does a lot of Palestine solidarity work. And she was saying, like, it's curious that we still use the word activism. Isn't humanism a better word to use? And I really hear it there, that for you, it's not activism, it's just life.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's literally just standing up for our people, our blood, right to survive as well in the case of Lebanon during the revolution. Yeah, that really speaks to me.
I saw something on Instagram a little while ago, and it was like, if you want to look at like the progressive way forward, always look to the students. And like throughout history, it's always been why the government's always tried to silence the student protests, because it's always the youth that are like leading the charge on, I guess, on the future. So I was just wondering, do you feel like what you've described of like the way that you and your friends were engaging, is that kind of like across the board? Is that the climate for most of the Lebanese youth, would you say?
It's hard to generalize because I don't actually know, but from
more.
Yeah. But from my lived experience, that's what it feels like to me. Because even during, we protested and left our jobs, and we were like there from morning to night every single day for months when the revolution started. And at some point, we did actually feel like we were potentially going somewhere, although it did feel really chaotic and unorganized in some ways, but we still felt like we were getting somewhere. And then COVID happened, and then the explosion happened, and that felt very, it felt like we lost everything that we were working towards, and it was a very hopeless feeling. Like the one word that comes to mind is despair. But despite that, and despite how bad the explosion was, every single person I know, because again, we took a step back, we took stock of what we have, we acknowledged our privilege in that while our own windows were broken, we could potentially take a step back and go down to the streets and then fix them later, whereas other people couldn't even afford to fix their windows, let alone get the medical care that they needed immediately because they were right by the port. So we acknowledged that, and we were like, we don't really have a choice. We're going to go down to the street and help people in need. We had no idea how. We just went down and we did it. And it did feel very, it's kind of like we compartmentalized everything. And it was like, the mode that we were in was survival mode, and that was it. We weren't feeling anything. We were just down there, and we were helping each other out, coming together as a community. And at that moment in time, I did see every single person I know, like literally every single person I knew was on the streets. You'd run into them, like, hey, you're doing this today. Okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And we formed grassroots organizations as well. So people started coming together and going, we're going to start running food drives. You guys should go to different houses and ask people what medication they need. You guys should start cleaning up the glass on the streets, because obviously our own government wasn't doing anything. And yeah, so I think I described it as beautiful in the panel, and it feels weird describing it as beautiful, but I think the right word is bittersweet. It was really obviously a very horrible, disgusting time, but simultaneously, even though we felt really hopeless at that point, being together amongst people and being so united under a single cause really reinforced that sense of not necessarily hope at that point, but humanity And again, the idea of collective togetherness, collective healing. So yeah, I do have really strong faith in the younger generations, even like the Western TikTok era, for example. I've seen videos where people are like, oh my God, like the 16-year-old is, I am reading the Quran because it's actually not as bad as they made it out to be. Or, oh, this is what I'm learning about Islam. Or, oh, this is what I'm learning about Palestine. And it's so fascinating. It's also great that we're using technology and using this easy access now that we have to learn and understand that the systems and the way that things are running right now, we can't go on like this any longer. Like something needs to change. And I really do have faith in the youth. Otherwise, I feel like this would feel really hopeless because obviously the people in power, the older generations, like, no, they're not doing it for us anymore.
Totally. And what you're bringing attention to, I think is so powerful. Like people's ability to rally in an emergency or in the type of situation that you have described, a very physical need to be bringing medications, clearing up glass, or I was talking about it yesterday, talking about the race riots that were happening last summer. Is it last summer? Yeah, last summer. And how literally the next day, everyone gets a message of just, oh, anti-hate marches, anti-hate demos are happening today. We need to be there. And the number of people who just dropped things and just turned up. I don't know if you were there in Brighton.
I was moving a few days after the one where everyone came together and showed up and flooded with anti-hate march people.
Yeah. And it was amazing because it was one of those moments where you were like, oh, wow, people can actually rally very quickly. And what you said about people and understand that the situation is very different with what you were describing. Like people were leaving their jobs. People were just like downing tools of everything else. This is the most important thing. But it reminds me of something that I saw on Instagram the other day. You can tell how much time I spend on Instagram these days, which is like in an emergency or like in times of crisis, look for the helpers. And I feel like you said something like that on the panel, you know, that even in the like most abhorrent times, humans coming together is that bittersweet flip side. And I've really recognized that over the last couple of years or 19 months within everything that's happening within Palestine. The people who have been really speaking up, putting themselves out there, rallying, organizing, coming together in community. I know that it has been not enough people, but it has been amazing to observe this like little beacon of humanity that is coming together. Yeah, I really hear that within what you're sharing.
Yeah, it's so important nowadays. And I think that's really what's restoring our faith in humanity. Going to the protests is so cathartic because it's, wow, people are actually seeing us and hearing us and they're standing up for what's right. And people are actually feeling empathy, which is incredible. And it wasn't really my experience in London when things first started happening. It was really terrible seeing the responses from certain people. I also felt iced out from a lot of groups because they felt like I was talking too much about Palestine. And I was like, oh, I'm really sorry to inconvenience you that people are dying. I'm so sorry to inconvenience you. But that is, yeah, that's another story. But yeah, I was just thinking of this it's a minor story. It's a very small accomplishment, but it still holds so much weight in my heart. Because after the explosion, it was really hot, by the way, and it was in the middle of COVID. So people were like double, triple masked because this was back in the day when we had no idea what COVID was and everything was really confusing. And we were watching videos of people like saying that you could potentially die in your sleep. And it was very scary to all of us. But we had no choice and we had to come together as big communities of people. And people were like, yeah, double masked up. And it was also really hot. My friend almost had heat stroke. Like she was going to faint. She had to leave after being out all day in the sun, picking up glass, picking up water bottles, like litter that people were throwing on the streets. And we were really exhausted and we were walking at some point. And there was a guy just sat in this shaded area on the side of the street, like on the pavement. And he looked really upset. So we asked him, we were like, Ammo, what do you need? Is there something wrong? And he said, no, I'm fine, but my glasses broke and I can't see. And we were like, okay, what do we do? So all I did was post on my Instagram. I was like, hey guys, this man has broken glasses. He can't see a thing. He can't afford to repair them. Can anyone help? And within 10 minutes, 5 different people were like, this business offers to fix it for free. This business wants to fix it for this business. Like, he had so many options. And we ended up picking one random, I can't remember why, but we picked one random company. And he went and he got his glasses repaired for free. And I remember he texted me the next day and he was like, oh my God, I can't believe this actually happened. This is great. And it was so heartwarming. And then there was also this man. So at one of the protests, everyone put their phones up and used them as a light because it was dark. I think it was after a father was shot by the military in front of his son. And it was really horrible. May he rest in peace. And so people were coming, I think it was probably one of his vigils, and they put their phones up and they were using it as a light. And this man was crying and he was captured on someone's camera because he didn't have a light. So he was using a lighter and he was just crying and using the lighter and waving it. And somebody posted about it on Instagram and they were like, where can we find him? And people came together. They started a fundraiser. They got him a phone. Literally 24 hours later, there's a picture of him with a phone smiling. And people are like, we got him a phone. Hey, that's so beautiful. These stories are so heartwarming to me. And whenever I think of my people, I just like, it really restores the faith that I have in humanity, because sometimes the world feels like such a cold, callous place. But then I think of my people and I'm like, oh my God, no, actually, there are such amazing people out there.
I'm curious, as someone with the background that you have, how has it been watching everything that has taken place, both within the Lebanon, but also within Palestine? How has that been for you over the last couple of years?
It's been really difficult. And obviously, this is a magnitude that we've never, ever witnessed before. There's a genocide taking place, and although they've always had genocidal intent and they've been murdering our people since their inception, but yeah, we've never witnessed it to this extreme. And it's horrible because simultaneously, I think I've come to the realization that I wouldn't say the majority of people, because again, I don't want to generalize, and there are a lot of people that are speaking up, especially now more than ever. But a lot of people just don't care. And so I think the first year I spent a lot of time struggling to cope with the idea, but not even the idea, the fact that some people just don't give a shit. They're not going to care. They're not going to want to care. As much as you scream at them, as much as you show them facts and statistics and tell them emotional stories, because I think storytelling is really important, show them pictures, videos, whatever it is, they're not going to care. And I can't force them to care. And there's not much that I can do about it. So I think over the last few months, I've been dancing with the idea of letting that part of me that wants to seek justice with every single person that I meet, I'm letting that part go because I don't feel like it's serving me anymore. And that part of me that expects the entire world to feel empathy, I'm letting that part go because it's just not possible for some people. Some people just really don't care. And it's a very morbid thought, but it's so real. I'm sure you feel that too. Like, it's so strange to think about how little people care.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, I think it's also important to note how dehumanizing it's been for a lot of us, because especially the first year, I would say, it's not the first year, but the first year since the West started paying attention to what's been happening in our region, it's especially people in the media were really trying to find excuses to justify the murder of our people. And that was so dehumanizing, because the amount of times that I spoke to people, had conversations with people that I know personally, that were like, oh yeah, but Hamas. And I'm like, what? I'm telling you that thousands of people, tens of thousands of people are dying. And you're telling me, oh yeah, but it's just because Hamas. That drives me insane. So that was very dehumanizing. And when it all first started, I remember I lived in Kentish Town at the time. So I lived near Cafe Palestina, which is a very beautiful Palestinian-run business. It's a small coffee shop and they host events there. Shout out to Cafe Palestina. They're amazing. And I went down there because I was like, I can't be speaking to anyone from the West right now. I need to find my Arabs. I want to speak in Arabic. Like, I don't want to speak English today. So I went down there on my own, and the owner, or the wife of the owner, I believe, she was there holding Palestinian flags. This was before the organized protest started. And I was like, oh, what are you doing? And she was like, we're just going to do like an impromptu demo in front of Kentish Town if you want to come. And I was like, all right, cool. So I went down there with her and a couple of her friends, and we just stood there. We were like 5 people, and all we were doing, we weren't even chanting at that point. We were just like holding the flags, having conversations with people walking by, handing out flyers maybe. Oh my gosh. The amount of times we got called terrorists, pigs, just the most horrible words you can ever think of, the most horrible adjectives you can ever think of, out of people's mouths. There was an old white man who called me a fascist, and I was like, like I couldn't help it at that point. Yeah, I know.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So that was very dehumanizing.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing all of that, because this stuff is rough, and I can only imagine. My blood boils watching this shit. Oh God. I was watching Piers Morgan the other day with Sharon Osbourne as well there. I don't know if you saw this. Probably if you haven't seen it, don't go there. And what I really landed on was this feeling of like grief of the people that I thought that we were, the world that I thought that we lived in. And for those of us within the wellness space who have outwardly said that we stand for change and healing, to still experience so much silence within our industry, the industry that stands for change and healing and spirituality and coming together and oneness, the amount of silence really brought up this grief of the industry that I thought that I was a part of, the spiritual circles that I thought that I was a part of. And that is just not the case. So I can only imagine how the intensity of that grief, it's so much for people to process.
Yeah. And it's something we can't really change. And not necessarily speaking about the wellness community in particular, but I was also thinking about something else. Back to the Sharon Osbourne point, the people that regurgitate the same echo chamber, especially now, after having access to so much information, there's so much content online debunking the lies of Israel. If they're still latching on to that idea and making arguments to justify the murder of Palestinians, then that's just rooted in racism towards Arabs. And that's something that's not talked about enough, by the way, because it's so easy for people to make a joke about an Arab being a terrorist. That's completely fine. But it's obviously really wrong to make jokes about marginalized communities. But why aren't jokes about Arabs treated with the same sort of caution, or with the same sort of, what's the word? Help me form my sentence here. Do you know what I'm saying?
I don't know what word you need.
Fair.
Yeah, what I hear in that is also this normalization of this lack of, I mean, it's like a hypocrisy, isn't it? And it's a double standards and if this was happening somewhere else, and I mean, imagine if this was happening in Europe, like the international community would have rallied day one. So yeah, what I hear and what you're saying is like, at this point, there's no other justification besides racism, besides white supremacy, besides these systems that have been upheld for so long. And this is what I mean about like people who've done not even people who've done the critical thinking over the last couple of years, because I really think that the critical thinking is like, this is immoral. full stop. Like the killing of humans is immoral, full stop. Wrong, good, bad. If you're going to see it in a binary linear way, we're going to veer towards wrong, probably. But the people who have interrogated it, like, this is the pulling of the, what, okay, why is this happening? Why is this being allowed to happen? What are the origins of these things? Oh, colonialism, imperialism, racism, white supremacy, capitalism. And then the whole veil drops. And I suppose I find it challenging, as having gone through that process, people who have not even done step one of that. And it's almost like, I saw something again on Instagram the other day. God, maybe I do need to reduce my Instagram time. But I saw something on Instagram the other day, which was like, if you are still not against this, it's either that you haven't seen the footage or you're just a bad person.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's quite a good way of looking at it. But I feel like people who perhaps haven't seen the footage, of my algorithm is just like footage, advert, footage. If your Instagram is not that, people are living in a different world. Full stop.
It's hard for me to imagine that there are people out there who haven't seen the footage. It's really hard for me to conceptualize this idea that there are people out there who are so deep in their own bubbles that they aren't aware of what's going on. But these people exist. They do exist. It's just...
I also feel like there is some level of conscious choice around that, because or unconscious choice around that, because you know that it's happening. So for me, if I knew that something was happening, but I felt like Instagram or wherever I'm hanging out wasn't serving me the real idea of what was happening, I feel like I'd want to do a little bit of investigation. But I think that the investigation is the opening up and the dismantling of everything that you believe to be true about the world. Fill in the blank on that one.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like a lot of people in the wellness community as well just muted the accounts that were speaking up about it, because that's something that I've experienced personally as well. Like a lot of yogis or a lot of like women that host like wellness women's circles, and they just ended up muting or unfollowing my account when I started going, hey, the war in Lebanon's really bad, my people are dying.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. When you were joking earlier about Palestine and politics being like your only real avenue of conversation, like I even joked when we were going to a friend's birthday party, and I was like, can you give me some conversation topics to lead with? Because on my agenda otherwise is like Palestine, racism, white supremacy, or capitalism. So these are the conversations that I'm going to bring to the table. So can you like give me some cues here? So I hear you totally. I just wanted to ask you as well, with everything that is important to you, everything that is like in your blood and in your bones, the way that you see wellness is collective, wellness as collective. Can you speak to that? Because I know that we were speaking on the panel about the way that you define wellness. And as somebody, you know, with your lived experience who has chosen to go into the wellness space, can you speak about how this has infused your idea of wellness?
Yeah, I think growing up in Lebanon and coming from a Palestinian and Syrian family, wellness has always been about looking after other people. It's always been about coming together as a community. Like when I think of wellness back home, it's about inviting people over for dinner, like cooking them lots of food, ensuring that they're eating. We're always like, you need to eat. That's like a cultural thing, like forcing people to eat, although that can be a bit of an issue sometimes. But it's very much focused on this collective healing, collective wellness mentality. Moving to the UK and launching the startup, and obviously the startup is about these functional blends, so healing yourself, and that is equally as important. But I noticed how the spaces that I was in, that I'm still in, are so focused on hyper individualism and healing the self over anything else. So much so that, again, speaking to what we were just saying, that when things like this happen in the world, it's almost like they turn a blind eye to it, or they just refuse to see it because they want to exist in their little bubbles of wellness. But that idea of wellness doesn't feel real to me. It doesn't feel authentic because there's no way, because I believe that everyone's capable of compassion to some degree. There's no way that you can exist in a world and be well if everything is burning around you. And I think I spoke to this in the panel. I keep repeating the same sentence over and over again, but it's so true to me. It reminds me of the meme. I think I mentioned this on the panel as well. The dog sitting down having dinner and everything's burning around him and he's just, I'm fine. That's the way the wellness community in the West feels to me. Because like, how can you be fine? Everything is going to, can I swear?
Yes.
Everything's going to shit right now. And these systems need to collapse. And also, another thing that I recognize is how exclusive wellness feels to me in the West. Like the way that we think of wellness here is, let's say, an exclusive yoga retreat that costs a certain amount of money that only a specific type of people can afford. Whereas wellness means access to healthcare, access to personal care, being able to look out for yourself and other people. So it's definitely very, I would say, I was going to say disoriented, but that's not the right word. It feels really detached. And yeah, that's really why within my work, I started emphasizing on the wellness as collective idea, which was further reinforced when the war in Lebanon intensified from September onwards, because I started feeling, okay, I have a wellness startup. I saw these blends that are created to make you well. But then at the same time, the wellness community around me is ignoring me and not really hearing me or seeing me or holding space for my anger and my pain, or the pain and suffering of my people, obviously. So this feels really wrong. I don't feel like I feel right existing in this space right now. What should I do? I took a step back. I stopped focusing on marketing the business. I was like, let me just, obviously focusing on my friends and family. It felt wrong to do anything for my business at that point in time. And then eventually when things started settling down a little bit, I was like, how do I ensure that my business feels aligned to my personal values? Because right now, although I'm so passionate about nutrition and I really believe in the ingredients, it just feels wrong. I don't want to just push out another product into the world. Like we've got so many products out there. It just doesn't make sense to me anymore. It doesn't feel aligned. And that's when I started thinking, okay, I need to really just push the two things together. Like my existence is political, wellness is collective, this with the business and this idea of wellness. And that's how Wellness is Collective came about. And that's when I started thinking of different social impact initiatives that I can enforce within the business to further emphasize the idea that wellness is collective and to give back to the community. And so now a lot of the things that we're doing are centered on events. We just launched an initiative called Nominate Someone, where you can fill out a form to nominate, let's say, a healthcare worker or someone that's contributing to the community in some way, an activist, an aid worker, whoever that inspires you. You can fill out a form and they can enter a draw where once a month, we pick out a person and they win a free wellness package from us. And that kind of reinforces the idea of, oh, consider other people, like give back to the community. And then also we do charity initiatives every quarter, because at the moment I'm not making anything at all because it's still a new startup, it's a baby. But for 48 hours, we pick a specific charity. We started with the Sudan Solidarity Collective, and everything you buy from us, all profits go towards a specific charity. And then also eventually, this is the most exciting part, my dad just got access to his land in Syria again, which is really exciting. Wow. And we used to have farmers there that would grow lavender and chamomile and different herbs and ingredients that I use in my blends. So now what we're thinking is, because at the moment I source them from all over the world, we're trying to work on sourcing ingredients from Syria to foster economic growth back home and also to employ farmers and start working with my people in our homelands. So Syria is the start, and then eventually we have the aim of going back and sourcing ingredients from Lebanon, and then eventually Palestine would be the ultimate aim. That would be amazing. But there are so many different ways that you can integrate this idea into your business as well, which is why there are so many things going on. And I feel like yeah, it just makes me feel so much more aligned. And I've lost, because at that point in time when everything was really bad, a lot worse than it is now in Lebanon, I felt really guilty running my business, and I felt like my passion was dying. I didn't feel right doing what I was doing anymore, but now it feels a lot more aligned. And yeah, just also focusing on speaking up within the business. I don't know if you heard about I think he's the co-founder of Ben and Jerry's, Ben Cohen.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah, he just got arrested this morning. I'm like, that's the kind of founder I want to be. Like, that's what I want to be known for. That's what inspires.
I love it. Like I watched the scene of him getting arrested yesterday, and like I'm now watching these things, being like, yes, more of this, please. Yeah. Yeah. Don't worry. If you get arrested, I'll be the first to bail you out.
Yeah, my mom's always worried about that. She's like, you're on a visa, you need to be careful. Even about the podcast, by the way, she was like, don't say anything too abrasive. They're gonna arrest you.
Yeah, I know. And the thing is, it's like, that's a real, I mean, we joke about it, but like in States,
people are getting deported.
And like a friend was like, come to America, come to the States, come visit. And I was like, are you joking? I'd be arrested at the airport. They just have to look at my social media. No thanks.
That's what I always say. I'm like, guys, I'm Arab. My friend was like, oh, I'm going to this wedding. You should come with me. And I was like, they won't let me in. You're not going to let me into the US. There's no way in hell that I'm going to be allowed in the US right now. But who knows? Who knows? I think the tables are slowly starting to turn. And this Trump versus Netanyahu thing is very interesting to me. And we'll see how this plays out in the next few months.
We'll cross up all of our fingers and all of our toes.
Yeah.
I know that we're at time. I want to ask you so many more things. Maybe we can come back for a part 2. However, you've obviously mentioned about your business and initiatives that you're starting, events that you'll be doing, I guess, locally as well, in-person stuff as well as online. How can people find you? How can people support you? How can people get involved with what you're doing?
Ooh, thank you for asking that. So if you want to follow the business, you can find me on Amfi Botanicals on Instagram. And then I'm starting a run today on Nakba Day. I'm running 107 kilometers, which covers the distance from occupied East Jerusalem to Gaza over the span of 1 month. I've got a foot injury, so I'm really anxious, but I got a new pair of shoes, so hopefully everything will be okay. But
you're starting this today?
Yeah, today.
Oh my God, you did this podcast and then you're like running a proportion of 107K. Wow. Okay. Go, girl.
I think I'm going to start with a 10K. I'm going to take it easy. Like I'll spread it out over a month. But I'm going to share it to Amfi Botanicals. I'm going to share the link. I'm raising funds for medical aid for Palestine with that run. Whoever wants to donate, that would be amazing. I can share the link with you as well. Okay. And yeah, I think that's it. I could also share my personal Instagram. It's political and personal at the same time. It's not Yasmeen, because I'm not Yasmeen. Haha, it's not real. Instagram isn't real. But also the O is a 0.
I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, love. I hope that the runs continue to go well. Bless you. I did the marathon a couple of years ago and I hurt my foot literally like the weeks before. My whole foot like blew up so big. I had great acupuncture for it. So if you need, that was really helpful. But yeah, thank you so much for everything that you've shared, both in terms of your personal experience, but also the way that you center your business within your values. I think it's so important for all of us to really consider, for those of us within the wellness spaces, within these types of communities. I think there is such an invitation at the moment to like keep going, like the layers deeper. It's like, why am I doing this? Okay, why am I doing that? Why am I doing that? And I feel like when we get to this place to bring about systemic change and initiate more community care, when that is at the base of our businesses, I feel like it brings such a different energy to the business. So I really celebrate the fact that you're doing that and so embodied in what you're doing. And yeah, just a real encouragement for listeners to seek you out, support your work. And I'd love to come to any of the events. So please let me know.
Yay. Yeah, we're doing one at Hello My Moon soon. So I'll send you the information. And also just one last thing that I wanted to say. You can, that's exactly what I wanted to get at, is just start small and do what you love and turn that into something that you can use to give back to the community. So if you like running, do that. It's so easy to raise money for a charity. Just pledge a certain amount and start running. Or if you love gigs, support Revolt Brighton. Yeah, they're a really cool fundraiser organization, and they raise funds for, I think it was Medical Aid for Palestine. All proceeds, every single ticket that you buy goes to Medical Aid for Palestine, and you can discover a lot of cool bands that actually care about the cause as well. There's so many different ways that you can incorporate activism into your daily life, not just your business as well.
I love that. And I think it really brings it back to this point of whatever your skills are, whatever your qualities are, whatever your interests are, whatever your whatever you feel like your kind of purpose is, there are ways that you can bring that into the main space of activism and your contribution to systemic change. So yeah, thank you for naming that too. Thank you so much, love. I've loved this. And yeah, just wish that we could continue for the next few hours, but I appreciate you have miles to run. So good luck.
Thank you so much. And thank you for always hearing and giving voice to our people as well. It's very deeply appreciated.
Thank you for listening. It's great to have you with me on this journey towards higher love for all. Our time is our greatest commodity and gift, so thanks for investing it in yourself and sharing it with me. Please do take a moment to rate and review the show, all of which enables more people to find me and for me to connect with more great guests each week for both yours and my enjoyment. All links, references and contact information is detailed too within the show notes. And I always love to hear your feedback, so feel free to hit me up on my Instagram at higherlove_with_Megan or via my website higher-love.com. Send your takeaways, and if you enjoyed this episode, please share or send on to someone else who would benefit. Until next time, big love.